Good morning, students. Today we will be discussing on the topic which is very important while we cover the metabolism of carbohydrates. So in the last class you might have gone through the process of digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. So whatever you take, the food which you take it inside, and one of the major macronutrients, that is your macromolecule, that is your carbohydrate, is broken down into smaller molecules, the monosaccharide unit, the glucose and the fructose, which ultimately is absorbed in our body. So now the question comes, next what? So they are being broken down in the intestine, they are broken down in the stomach by different enzymes, and after that they are absorbed inside the body. So what happens after that to those molecules? So most important molecules that we get from carbohydrate is the monosaccharide unit, glucose. So we take food to get energy. So the simple line is that we have to derive energy from this molecule. So it comes inside our body, and after that what happens to glucose is what we are going to discuss in the coming few classes. And the most important metabolism is for glucose glycolysis. That means we are further breaking down the glucose molecule, we are lysing the glucose molecule to get energy out of it, right? So let us be very much brief about our discussion. So I will be discussing this particular chapter under few headings. First of all, we will look into the metabolism as such, what are the different steps, what are the different enzymes, and the energetics, right? Next we are going to look into the regulation of this particular forces, and lastly we are going to discuss the biomedical importance of glycolysis and few important clinically relevant points related to this particular chapter, right? So let us start then. So glycolysis, first of all, any sort of metabolism, you have to know where it occurs, right? All the cells, inside all the cells, glycolysis occurs for the purpose of getting energy out of it, right? What is the site? The site is your cytosol. So the entire process is cytosolic, right? After that you have to know the requirement of oxygen, whether oxygen is required or not. So one thing should be borne in mind, that it is both aerobic and anaerobic. So how in aerobic the process occurs, and what is the end product, and what occurs in anaerobic condition, and what is the end product, and what are the energies that we derive in these two processes, that we will discuss later on. So to start with, glucose has come inside the cell, inside the cytosol. So I have taken glucose inside the cytosol. So let me see right here, the glucose molecule, 6 carbon, 3, 4, 5, 6. So glucose is an aldose sugar. So this is the aldehyde group. So this is my glucose. Why I am just giving you the schematic diagrammatic representation, because as we proceed further with the process, it will be easier for you to understand that in which position, what are the changes that is occurring, and what are the enzymes that are coming into play, and what is their function as such. So enzymes chapter also you have discussed, you have gone through the classification also you have done. So we will see the various enzymes, the different enzymes which are required in the glycolysis process. I will simultaneously say you right and the classification which class right and they belong to depending upon the function, so it will be very much easier for you to relate. So first glucose comes inside the cell, so this glucose molecule is then converted to glucose 6-phosphate. So glucose 6-phosphate. So this is my first carbon, second, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the first change which occurs is that we are adding one phosphate group here, right? So this is the phosphate group. So this is glucose 6-phosphate. So here you can see one phosphate has been added. That means a phosphate group is transferred. So it is transferred from where? It is transferred from ATP. One ATP molecule is used and this ATP is converted to ADP plus phosphate, and this phosphate is transferred here. So this particular step will be done by an enzyme which belongs to the class of transferase because it is transferring, right? So what is that? It is a kinase. Always remember, the transferase which transfers phosphate group from ATP to another molecule is a kinase. So it will be a glucokinase, right? If suppose you forget the name and simply remembering the action which this particular enzyme does and you just write that and this is a transferase or it's a kinase, then also it will be okay. So with that particular knowledge, if we brief fundamentals, if you keep in mind, it is going to be easier for you to remember the entire step. So once glucokinase converts to glucose 6-phosphate here, you should remember that along with glucokinase there is another enzyme that is hexokinase. Both of them, they do the same job. They have the same job with the transferase activity, transferring the phosphate group. So how they differ, that we are going to discuss it in the regulation point of view, right? And it's glucokinase and hexokinase. What is the basic difference between these two particular enzyme, subclass of enzyme? After glucose 6-phosphate, next comes the step of isomerization. This glucose has to be isomerized. That means what? See, this is an aldose sugar. So if I have to change the functional group, if I put this carbonyl group over here, right, then this glucose molecule becomes a fructose molecule. Isn't it? Fructose molecule, you have got the carbonyl group in the second position. So this is an isomerization which is occurring, right? So obviously glucose 6-phosphate to fructose 6-phosphate, the enzyme will be phosphohexose isomerase. Phosphohexose. Obviously, this is a phosphohexose. Phosphate group linked with an hexose. So glucose 6-phosphate is a phosphohexose. So glucose 6-phosphate has been isomerized to fructose 6-phosphate. So this is phosphohexose isomerase, right? Now this fructose 6-phosphate, the next step is going to get converted to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Bisphosphate by 2 phosphates, right? 1 and 6 position. In the 6th position we had phosphate. So what we have to do is that we have to add another phosphate over here. So this is fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So obviously it will be another transferase enzyme. So a transferase enzyme which is transferring a phosphate group to from ATP to another molecule will be what? A kinase, right? So kinase is a transferase. Now fructose 6-phosphate, so this is going to be, this is phosphofructokinase, because fructose 6-phosphate is phosphofructose, isn't it? So phosphofructokinase, PFK is the enzyme, and it is taking one ATP molecule, using one ATP and giving me ADP plus phosphate, and this is adding up here. Done? Now the next step is fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So till now the enzymes which we have encountered is one transferase enzyme in the form of kinase, one isomerase enzyme in the form of phosphohexosisomerase. Now in the next step we are going to have our third class of enzyme, the lyase, right? Lyase, what is that? Aldolase. So you know what is the function of lyase. Lyase, it breaks what? CC, CO, CN, CS. It breaks this bond or it forms this bond. If it is breaking this bond, then what it is doing is that it is introducing double bond between the two carbon atoms. It is introducing double bond, right? And if it is forming this bond, then it is converting the double bond to single bond. Lyase, right? CC, CO, CN, CS bonds are being formed or broken down. If formed, then it is going to convert the double bond into single bond, and if it is broken, then it is going to introduce the double bond, right? So let us see. With the example, we are going to assess it better. So this is going to break it. So 1, 2, 3. So this is the point where it breaks CC bond here. This lyase enzyme, that is the aldolase, it is breaking it here, right? So as it is breaking it here, what did I say? It breaks up here, so it is going to add one double bond, right? So just see what it does. Here I have got see, it is breaking the bond. Here it is introducing the double bond. Okay. So this is the two compound which is been formed, 3 carbon compound. 2,3 carbon compound is formed. This particular compound is known as dihydroxy acetone. This is dihydroxy acetone, and the phosphate group is there, so dihydroxy acetone phosphate. And this is basically a glyceraldehyde molecule. Just think that if I remove this phosphate group, then it is a glyceraldehyde molecule, right? With an aldehyde group here, this is glyceraldehyde. So what will be this particular compound? It will be glyceryl 3 carbon compound, glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, right? So fructose 1,6-bisphosphate broken down at the CC bond, right, by an enzyme which belongs to the class lyase, and lyase breaks CC, CO, CN, CS bonds, and it is introducing one double bond here, giving me 2 3 carbon compounds. One is dihydroxyacetone phosphate and another is glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. So let me write here, one is your DHP, dihydroxyacetone phosphate, and one is your glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, right? So let me just rub it here. Now these glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate and dihydroxyacetone phosphate are interconvertible, as because these 2 3 carbon molecule are isomers of each other. So if they are interconvertible, then the enzymes which will be responsible for that will be an isomerase, and just like phosphohexosisomerase, this is a glyceraldehyde is a 3 carbon compound, so this is a triose, so it will be phosphotriose isomerase. So phosphotriose isomerase converts this interconversion, does this interconversion of the compound. So DHP is getting converted to glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. Now let us just concentrate on glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. So as I have said you, so this is your aldehyde group, the double bond which is being introduced, right? So this is your glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate molecule, right? So this glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate molecule, the next step occurs is that it is going to get converted to one 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. Here there is a catch. Here the 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, again you will say, sir, here again another phosphate group is added, so there will be a kinase enzyme, a transferase which is going to transfer a phosphate group from the ATP to this particular molecule. This will be an easier process, but here this particular kinase enzyme is not coming into play. Here simultaneously what happens is that your NAD plus, a coenzyme, is getting reduced to NADH plus H plus. This is the oxidized form. This NAD we will discuss. You have studied it in the enzymes, enzyme chapter, in the coenzyme, the various vitamins which acts as coenzymes. So niacin, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, which acts as a coenzyme, the oxidized form will be converted to the reduced form. So that means here what happens is that in this step, this oxidized form is going to get reduced. And in turn what happens is that this particular glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase enzyme which does this work, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase is the enzyme. So this enzyme does this oxidation reduction reaction. This oxidized form is being reduced to NADH plus H plus. So that's why this is an oxidoreductase enzyme. So oxidation reduction occurs with the coenzyme, and just for you, just remember this particular enzyme has got another function. This is inorganic phosphorylasis, right? So it uses a single phosphate group to lyse the compound which is formed between this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and this particular enzyme. Enzyme with this sulfhydryl group is going to form a bond with this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, right? And this enzyme is going to have a coenzyme which is going to get reduced, and then this enzyme has got another function, inorganic phosphorylase. It takes one inorganic phosphate, a free phosphate, not from ATP, free phosphate from the cytosol, and what is it is going to do? It is going to break the bond which has been formed between this enzyme and the substrate, and it is going to add this phosphate here. Right, it is going to add this phosphate here. How it is in this process, how it is getting added is that in this form. That means the aldehyde group is being converted to the carboxyl group and the phosphate is added. That's why the name is 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is the 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is the name of the enzyme. Right. So next let us see, this 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is then converted to 3-phosphoglycerate. So 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is getting converted to 3-phosphoglycerate. How this occurs? This, let us rearrange it, right? It is, no need to rearrange. Just let us write it COO minus here, COH and CH2OP. So this is a phosphoglycerate, so 3-phosphoglycerate. So what is the enzyme here? Another kinase. Just remember, another kinase. Here this kinase, what it is going to do? It is going to transfer one phosphate from this molecule, that is from this molecule, and it is transferring it to a ADP, right? And thereby forming a adenosine triphosphate. So the energy is being produced in this particular step. This is the substrate level phosphorylation. You get ATP in the substrate level step, right? So this is one ATP which is formed from the phosphate which is present in this particular compound, a high energy compound 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is, and from this 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate this phosphate is getting transferred to ADP, and this ADP is getting converted to ATP, right? So this forms 3-phospho phosphoglycerate. The enzyme is, it is kinase let me write it clearly, phosphoglycerate kinase. Now this 3-phosphoglycerate, this particular point is visible. This 3-phosphoglycerate is getting converted to 2-phosphoglycerate. Here just remember, from third position we are transferring into second position, the phosphate group. So again this 3-phosphoglycerate and 2-phosphoglycerate, they are isomers, isn't it? They are isomers. Here isomerase was the enzyme which was changing the functional group, isn't it? The aldehyde sugar was converting to the ketose sugar. So that isomerase was changing the aldose ketose form, isn't it? Here just remember, it is just changing the phosphate group from one part to another. So such isomerase is given the name of mutase. Always remember, such isomerase is given the name of mutase. You will encounter it in the glycogen synthesis also. Glucose 1-phosphate getting converted to glucose 6-phosphate or 6-phosphate to 1-phosphate phosphoglucomutase. Here it will be phosphoglyceromutase. What it does is that the 3-phosphoglycerate is getting converted to 2-phosphoglycerate. 2-phosphoglycerate. Right? So this 2-phosphoglycerate will then be converted into, this 2-phosphoglycerate will then be converted into, what it is going to be done here. You see, here what happens is that this OH, right, and this H will go out as water molecule. Then the next step, a dehydratase enzyme. So this dehydratase enzyme, what it is doing, you see here, it is breaking this CO bond. It is breaking this CO bond. This is the CO bond which is getting broken down, right? So CC-CO-CN-CS bonds breaking enzyme is your lyase. So here another enzyme is there, enolase, which is a lyase which breaks this CO bond, removes this H2O. So it breaks the bond, it is going to introduce one double bond. Where it is going to introduce the double bond, just see here. Let us see, this is it. So as it is breaking down this OH and it is taking this particular water molecule out, it is introducing this particular double bond here. Right? So this particular double bond, sorry, this is complete now. I missed this particular phosphate group. So this is your 2-phosphoglycerol, phosphoenol pyruvate. Phosphoenol pyruvate. So this is your phosphoenol pyruvate. So we are forming phosphoenol pyruvate because the phosphate group is being added with this pyruvate molecule and there is one double bond, right? So this is a phosphoenol pyruvate. So this phosphoenol pyruvate is again going to get converted to lastly pyruvate. Pyruvate, right? It is going to get converted to pyruvate. How it is going to get converted to pyruvate? You just see, this is phosphoenol pyruvate. What we are going to do here is that we are going to transfer this particular phosphate to one ADP molecule, and this ADP molecule is getting converted to ATP, and in turn what happens to my molecule is C double minus CH. So this is my pyruvate molecule. What I have done is that I have removed this phosphate, I have transferred it to an ADP molecule, it is getting converted to ATP, and thereby this double bond is coming over here. So this is a kinase enzyme. But this kinase is transferring from the substrate, the phosphate group, to the ADP. So my ADP is getting converted to ATP, and the enzyme is phosphorylate kinase. So two substrate level phosphorylation we have seen. One is there in phosphoglycerate kinase step, one ATP molecule is generated. Another is in the pyruvate kinase step, another ATP molecule is generated. And this particular step where NAD molecule is getting converted to NADH plus H plus, so this has been reduced, and this reducing equivalent, just remember, when it gets passed through the electron transport chain, you have studied electron transport chain, you are going to get 2.5 ATPs. 2.5 ATPs, right? So this is in nutshell the entire metabolism process. Just remember, this entire thing occurs in the presence of oxygen, right? But I say the glycolysis can occur under aerobic and anaerobic condition. If no oxygen is there, no electron transport chain is there for converting back this reducing equivalent to NAD plus, so this entire step, entire process gets halt because of the inavailability of the oxidized NAD plus. This oxidized NAD plus, which is getting converted to NADH, it is being passed through the electron transport chain, from where this is again getting reconverted back to NAD plus, and we are getting energy out of it in turn. That is the discussion which is being done already in the electron transport chain class. And this NAD plus, again reformed NAD plus, will be available for the next cycle of the molecule. So if this is not available, suppose in case of lack of oxygen or lack of mitochondria, lack of electron transport chain, so the entire process gets halt over here. So to bypass this particular, to solve this problem, what our body does is that our body, what it does is that it converts pyruvate to lactate. The enzyme is lactate dehydrogenase. So this lactate, so pyruvate is getting reduced to lactate. In turn, it is using this reducing equivalent NADH plus H plus and getting converted to NAD, right? This NAD plus, which has been formed in this particular step, is being utilized here in this particular step, so that the process goes on and on and on. So in anaerobic glycolysis, just because you don't have oxygen, you don't have the process of electron transport chain, the mitochondrial electron transport chain, availability of NAD plus is ensured by this step, where pyruvate is converted to lactate and NADH is getting converted back to NAD plus, which is being used, right? So this is the end point of glycolysis. This is lactate under anaerobic condition, and under aerobic condition, this is the end product, pyruvate, which is further is metabolized to acetyl CoA and then to CO2 plus ATP and water. This particular thing done by pyruvate dehydrogenase complex inside the mitochondria, and this is citric acid cycle. So that will be discussed later on. So in nutshell, this is my glycolysis. So quickly let us just calculate the energy out of it, right? And what are the energy? So let me just calculate my energy here, and let me just make two tables. One is aerobic, another is anaerobic. So as I said, aerobic, you see what are the steps of utilization of ATP. Step 1 ATP is used. Step 3 another ATP is used. So 2 ATP is consumed. So this is the 2 ATP which is being consumed. Now let us come to the formation. One glucose molecule is going to give you 2 glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate molecule, isn't it? It is a 6-carbon compound. It is converted to 2 3-carbon compounds, right? So one glucose molecule will, till this step, it will be single step, and after that it will run twice, because it is going to give you 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So it is going to form 2 NADH plus H plus. So per NADH gives me 2.5 ATPs per NADH. So 2 NADH is going to give me 5 ATPs. So the ATPs which are formed are plus, let me add here, plus 5 ATPs which are formed, and in the substrate level phosphorylation, again in this step 2 ATPs, and here 2 ATPs. So total 2 plus 2 substrate level phosphorylation, we have got 4 ATPs which is formed. So why 2? Because the designated 3-phosphate step is running twice. Okay. So in total we have got 9 ATPs which is formed and 2 ATPs which is consumed. So under aerobic condition 9 minus 2 is, we get 7 ATPs, right? But under anaerobic condition we don't have our oxygen and the mitochondrial electron transport chain. So this particular NADH is not being passed through electron transport chain to get this 2.5 ATP. So this step is not there. This ATP formation is not occurring here. So what we have got only 2 plus 2, 4 ATPs, 4 ATPs which is formed, and these 2 ATPs which is getting consumed. So all in all we are having 2 ATPs. So in anaerobic glycolysis we have only 2 ATPs. So just because lack of oxygen is compromising this particular step, and it is making this particular glycolysis step to produce less ATPs, this 5 ATPs less, right? So this is the energetics. Now coming on to regulation. So I said regulation, and quickly after that I'll give you some biomedical important points and clinically relevant points. Regulation just occurring, and enzyme is getting regulated by allosteric regulation, by covalent modification, and induction repression in the genetic level. So this entire process, just remember one particular thing, 2 hormones you have to remember. Insulin is going to get this particular step regulated, upregulated, right? With insulin, this glycolysis step is going to occur, because insulin is, what is the function of insulin? It reduces the blood sugar level. So as we eat, as we digest and absorb the glucose molecule in the blood, it enters inside the cell, so it is getting used up to derive energy out of it, and just because the level of glucose is going down, so insulin is the hormone which is going to give positive regulation here, right? Similarly, glucagon, which increases the blood glucose level, will negatively regulate this particular step, right? So this is your hormonal regulation. So insulin and glucagon does this particular thing by covalent modification of the enzyme. Just remember phosphorylation, dephosphorylation, that we will discuss it in the chapter signal transduction. So remember, this is a covalent modification which is occurring, right? Induction repression, right, fine, that particular genetic level, that a long-term regulation, it occurs by increasing the synthesis of genetic level, increasing the synthesis of formation of this insulin molecule, or repressing the formation of this glucagon molecule. And the allosteric regulation, the feedback regulation, always remember this glucokinase hexokinase step will be inhibited by its product glucose 6-phosphate. Negatively it will regulate, right? It will give a negative. Phosphofructokinase, this one will be negatively regulated by ATP. If more ATP is there, so this ATP is going to get negatively regulate this particular step, so that the glycolysis step is stopped, because excess ATP is not required for the body. Similarly, citrate, because after that the pyruvate I said it goes to acetyl-CoA, and then citric acid cycle, citrate is formed. The more citrate means the energy formation has, the signal is the energy formation is more. So citrate is also not required when in excess, so this citrate will negatively regulate. Similarly, if the energy level is less inside the cell, the marker for this less energy level is 5' AMP, which is formed from ADP, right? So this is going to positively regulate. This step will also be positively regulated by fructose 6-phosphate, right? The substrate is going to, right? So this is another, and just remember this phosphofructokinase is very important step, which is the main regulatory step of glycolysis phosphofructokinase. Coming here, the pyruvate kinase step, this pyruvate kinase step will be regulated by the substrate, this is fructose 6-phosphate, right, and it will be similarly inhibited by the product and also by the energy ATP. So I have mentioned 3 steps: glucose 6-phosphate, phosphofructokinase and pyruvate kinase. So just remember, these are the 3 steps. This step, and this step, these are irreversible. All the other steps are reversible. This isomerase steps, it can go either way, right? This way, right? So this is also either way. Aldolase is also either way. It can go here also. It can go either way, right? Only these 3 steps: glucose to glucose 6-phosphate given by glucokinase, then fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate by phosphofructokinase, and phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate by pyruvate kinase. These are irreversible steps. So during gluconeogenesis, these steps are bypassed using different enzymes, right? That will be discussed later on. Just remember, for now, these are the 3 irreversible steps. Now, next, coming on to this particular aspect, that these 2 I said, glucokinase and hexokinase, how they differ, right? Always remember, hexokinase enzyme has got low Km, Michaelis Menten constant, low Km, that is known to you. Low Km means more affinity. Glucokinase has got higher Km, high Km, that means its affinity is less. So under normal condition, low level of glucose, this hexokinase has got high affinity and it comes into play. But just after post meal, when you eat meal, the glucose is flooded to specific tissues, liver and pancreas. This glucose enters inside the cell. How this glucose enters inside the cell? It is through GLUT2. That transporter will be discussed later on. Just remember, it is insulin independent. All other tissues, it is dependent on insulin. Here it is insulin independent. Excess of glucose which enters here. So more and more glucose. So that time hexokinase will be totally saturated, and the excess of the glucose will be acted upon by this glucokinase enzyme, and it will be used for the storage purpose in liver, forming glycogen. And in pancreas, this gives a signal for the release of insulin. So this glucose enters into the pancreas. Inside the pancreatic cells, it is going to give you ATP. This ATP is going to block the ATP sensitive potassium channels, and the cell will be in the depolarized state. Thereby it causes the voltage gated calcium ions channels to open, and calcium moves inside, and the vesicles inside which the insulin is there will fuse with the membrane and insulin will be secreted out. So this is how the insulin gets secreted from the pancreas after a meal. Okay, so this in liver, excess of glucose is going to get converted to glycogen with the help of glucokinase, and here in pancreas, this glucokinase excess of glucose will be acting as a signal for the release of insulin, right, by this particular method. So this is the regulation part. So energetics is done, regulation is done. Just remember another part. Okay, just leave it for now. Let us quickly discuss the biomedical importance, and with that we are going to finish it up. Before going to, there is just one thing that I left, is that, okay, we will discuss it under biomedical importance. So glycolysis, both aerobic, anaerobic condition. Just remember, brain is the tissue in our body which is entirely dependent on glucose. right? Very much dependent on glucose. Under fasting condition, it can derive its energy no more than 20% from ketone bodies. Just remember, so this is the requirement, that not more than 20% it can derive from ketone bodies. So in the under fasting condition also 80% requirement of the brain is for glucose, right? Similarly, if you come here in the erythrocytes, what happens is that erythrocytes, it doesn't contain mitochondria. So what is the glycolysis which is going to occur in erythrocyte? It is going to be the anaerobic glycolysis, right? So erythrocytes, we are going to get anaerobic glycolysis. Also in skeletal muscle, when we exercise, when we run, what happens is that the oxygen requirement becomes more, and we need energy also, ATP also, to drive the process, isn't it? So a point comes where the oxygen requirement supersedes that of the ATP formation, right? So here what happens, there comes a point where there is a sort of oxygen deprivation. So skeletal muscle also can function under anaerobic glycolysis. Those anaerobic glycolysis to provide continuous supply of ATP during the strenuous exercise and the continuous run. That is the reason if you work hard, if you run hard, your muscle becomes fatigued and you feel a sort of nagging pain. Why? Because this anaerobic glycolysis will ultimately lead to deposition of lactic acid, isn't it? The end product is the lactate. So lactic acid, so it is going to acidify the environment, and lactic acidosis, which is ultimately going to give you those symptoms, right? So this is your skeletal muscle. Remember, heart muscle in turn is very much poor in doing this glycolysis step, always dependent on oxygen. So glycolysis very much poor. So anaerobic glycolysis, it is not that much capable of. So that is the reason just a shortage of oxygen in the coronary arteries will lead to ischemia, myocardial infarction, right? So here in erythrocytes, let us discuss another step, right? That is known as Rapaport-Lubering cycle. What happens is that in this step, this 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, which was getting converted to 3-phosphoglycerate, giving me energy. The enzyme is phosphoglycerate kinase. This step is bypassed. This 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate will be converted to 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate. So you see 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate to 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate. That means phosphate in first position is shifted to second position. So I say this particular isomerization is done by one enzyme, sort of enzyme. This is mutase, right? So the enzyme is 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate mutase, which is converting to 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate, and this 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate is acting upon by the enzyme phosphatase. So this is a hydrolase. Phosphatase is a hydrolase because it is breaking down this second position phosphate group. It is breaking down with the help of water. This is an hydrolase, okay, and getting converted to 3-phosphoglycerate. So this is your Rapaport-Lubering cycle. You will ask me then, what is the need of this particular cycle in erythrocyte? Less ATP is being formed, though it is undergoing anaerobic glycolysis, although compromised with the ATP formation, and again further compromisation. Why it is required? Just for the synthesis of this vital important compound 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate, 2,3-BPG. The function of 2,3-BPG is that this 2,3-BPG, once in the hemoglobin, it is going to reduce the affinity of hemoglobin towards oxygen. You have studied in physiology most probably. 2,3-BPG reduces the affinity of oxygen to hemoglobin, thereby it makes easier the liberation of oxygen to the tissues. So once in the tissue, the hemoglobin is going to liberate oxygen to the tissue level, isn't it? And that is aided by the association of this 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate, which is formed by this particular Rappaport Levering cycle, and with the compromise that one ATP formation is less here. So this is another important, biomedically important point. Last, cancer cells very much, they have high glycolytic activity. Cancer cells have got high glycolytic activity, right? So more and more, this is proliferation, is unregulated proliferation. So more and more cells, more and more glucose, they undergo glycolysis, and they ultimately, the level of oxygen is less. So cancer cells undergoes anaerobic glycolysis, right? Glycolysis, and they form lactic acidosis, because the end product is lactic acid. This anaerobic glycolysis in the lactic acid which is formed in gluconeogenesis chapter, you will see that this lactic acid is again taken back into the liver and forms glucose, right? In gluconeogenesis means formation of glucose. So this is an energy required step. More and more energy is required for entire gluconeogenesis process. No energy is formed here. Energy is only required. That's why you will find the cancer patient to be cachectic, very thin. Cancer patients are very thin because their metabolism are as such. This lactic acidosis, again when it is being taken into the liver and formation of glucose is occurred, more and more energy is consumed in this particular step. So the more energy is consumed here, the more the person will be totally malnourished and cachectic. So this is in nutshell. I might leave few points. So if at all you find out few relevant points which has been missed out in the class, you can kindly refer me back. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.